I'm looking at the Twitch channel. I'm not sure if we're live yet. Still in the... Oh, we are. Okay. Whoa, there we go. We're live. Excellent. Hi, everybody. Good morning on this wonderful Saturday for the Family Day long weekend. And for the very first community panel for Self-Flats 2021, this is a historical event. It's our largest esports and gaming event in Alberta's history, in our history. And we're so excited. And we're so excited to be able to kick off the first community panel of this program, or the first program for this event with the AESA checkpoint, which is something new that we're starting for Self-Flats 2021. So this is AESA checkpoint. The topics today are mental health and financial well-being. And I'm joined here this morning with some wonderful community leaders and professionals within this space. Some familiar faces, but also some new faces. So, of course, this panel will be moderated by myself. I'm Victor Lee, one of the co-founders for the Alberta Esports Association. And I'm also a sitting committee member for Basic Income Alberta, which is a member-driven organization connecting basic income advocates across Canada. And with me here is Geraldine Dresler. She's the executive director at the Distress Center, Calgary. It's a 24-hour crisis support line that features professional counseling and referrals, all at no cost. Geraldine holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and a Master's of Social Work, specializing in leadership in the human services. Welcome, Geraldine.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Rebecca DeVoe. For those of you in Edmonton, you may recognize her. Mostly Bex. She's the community manager for the Edmonton Community Meetup, powered by Twitch. It's a destination for Edmonton Twitch streamers and other content creators. Rebecca is also a Twitch streamer and content creator, and also a formal financial advisor. And right now, she regularly provides financial advice through her live streams and social media platforms, aka Financial Fridays. So definitely check that out. And we have Alex Shinke. She's this familiar face with MindBuff. She's been here a few times now for these community panels. She's a registered psychologist and the co-owner of MindBuffs, providing professional counseling, sports, and performance services. Counseling, and brings a collection of experiences in the areas of athletics, esports, counseling, and business. So welcome again, Alex. It's always a pleasure to have you. And last but not least, we have Amanda Atkins. Amanda is with the Mustard Seed, a poverty alleviation group serving individuals experiencing poverty and homelessness through support programs and services. So thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. Okay, so welcome everyone. We'll get started with the first key talking point. I think this is kind of the encompassing topic of today's panel, but it's a great way to kick off the program. We'll be talking about, first and foremost, self-care and how that relates to healthy gaming. So the mental health of many right now are impacted by economic insecurity, stress, and many other challenges, made worse by this current landscape of the pandemic. And recent studies have shown that gaming in particular can have a positive effect on our mental health. However, problematic gaming has also shown to lead to short-term coping strategies, negative emotions, and low self-esteem, particularly in these competitive environments. So what are some ways that our audience can enjoy their passion and love for gaming in a healthy way? And what are some actions that we can take outside of gaming to help improve our mental health and well-being? So we'll start with you, Geraldine, and then we'll open the floor.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, Victor. This is amazing, and it's so great to be here. And I want to share a little bit, I think, about what we talk about a lot at the Stress Center, and it's about finding that balance. So we're living so much of our lives online right now, and it's not just gamers, it's everyone. Our whole global population is working online, we're playing online, we're socializing online. So it's about finding that balance and making sure you take time away from your keyboard and time to decompress. And I heard you talk earlier, Victor, about sleep hygiene. I know you guys are going to be focusing on that this weekend. That's super critical, just making sure you have those good routines in place. And another thing we're talking about at the Stress Center quite a lot, because you can imagine this is a stressful time for folks. It's a really stressful time for people who are supporting other people with the same things they're struggling with. And that's what's happening for our team at Distress Center here in Calgary. And so we're talking about personalized self-care plans. And we're talking about how everyone should have a plan of things that are meaningful to you that can help you fill your bucket. So that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And we do have a presentation available online if people are interested in taking a look at what a personalized self-care plan can look like. Along with that, though, we're also talking about creating a community of care. Because if we shout, there's a quote that says, if you shout self-care at a group of people who need community care, you're failing people. Yeah. So we really have to step up and support one another. So if you see another gamer online or you know someone in your life who's struggling, it's important that you reach out to them. We can't put all of the onus on the individual to ask for help when they need it. And we also have this incredible service that's available across Alberta and now across Canada, which is 211. And it's in partnership with United Ways across Canada. It's available across North America. But 211 is an information referral hotline. So it's a phone line. You can also chat at ab.211.ca. You can also text info to 211. And you can get connected to those supports, because if you need help, or you identify someone in your life needs help, there's so many services available, it's hard to know which one is the right one. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what 211 can do. And in partnership with United Way Calgary and area, we provide that service at Distress Center. So it's a really great way just to get connected to those supports.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And great plug. Oh, I actually forgot to mention too, this panel is also presented by our sponsors at United Way of Calgary and area. So thank you so much. And that was a great plug for the services. I just linked the ab.211.ca in our Twitch live channel there as well, if anyone wants to check that out.
Thank you, Victor.
Of course. Oh, wonderful. Anyone else would like to chime in on this particular topic?
Yeah, so I just want to mention too, like in the gaming space as well, just because, as you had mentioned, everything is so digital right now. It's a really good time to also mention the difference between playing games for work and playing games for pleasure. For a lot of us who might be content creators or might be people who play competitively, it can go a lot from being something that we just enjoy and love to play to something that we have to play. So I really suggest finding something, whether it be, like for me, it's Minecraft. I never play Minecraft on stream or really talk about it online, that I play it like every day. But it's like the game that I play just for me and like just me and my friends from home play. So having that kind of divide between the games that you play for work and the games that you play for pleasure can help you with that burnout, I feel like.
Yeah.
Animal Crossing is another great one. Something low pressure that doesn't require you to have a lot of in-game mind time, especially because a lot of the things that we play competitively are so technical, fighting games being incredibly technical on their own. It's a good thing to mention that, yes, and Animal Crossing has an event coming up too. So it's a good time to hop into something that might be a little bit more relaxing and just experience games for the fun instead of for, and I know it's hard to make it seem like it's work, but as professionals in the gaming space, it is work, so.
No, that's actually a great perspective. And speaking from my own experience as a gamer and someone who competes in games, I think it's like anything else where if you have a hobby that you're deeply indulged with, and you walk a bit of a fine line between becoming like deeply engaged to the point where it's, starting to deteriorate your mental health and you start to attach like your self-esteem and self-worth to your own performance. Versus remembering why you're doing it in the first place, which is why you love it.
It's to have fun.
It's to have fun first and foremost. So, and I think that's like comparable to not just gaming, but really to anything. You can certainly, fall into a deep rabbit hole for any kind of pursuit that you take. And that's actually a great segue to our second key talking point, which is performance pressure in esports and the stress of competition. So, with regards to esports, the key kind of difference between esports and just regular gaming is there's the competitive component to it, much like in traditional sports, where oftentimes it could be considered a zero-sum game where there's going to be a winner and a loser at the end of the match as the outcome. And esports in particular has exhibited a grind culture where gamers spend hours upon hours practicing, often to the detriment of their own health. And due to performance pressure, as well as financial volatility within this particular space and the inherent competitive nature of this environment, in traditional sports, players have access to opportunities such as coaches and mentors and other developmental resources. However, esports, it's a new field, it's unregulated, it's decentralized, and it currently lacks access to the resources and structure that's necessary for that sustainable success and development of its players. And I think that's only emphasized by the younger demographic of esports as well. And lacking those mentorship opportunities can have a significant negative impact. So what are some ways that esports players and gamers in general can combat these challenges in a healthy way, despite having limited opportunities and resources? And I'll direct that question to Alex, and we'll open the floor.
And that's such a great question, Vic. And honestly, like when I first read it, I could spend hours talking about it. So today we're just going to kind of scratch the surface of it. Matt, as Vic said, Matt Damasak, he'll be on our socials answering questions if you guys ever have any questions while I'm talking or later on in the day. So the first piece I wanted to talk about was this grind culture. Matt and I call it this mindful versus mindless gaming. And thanks, Bex, for leading me into this so beautifully. I really appreciate it. But we really need to have breaks and, like Matt said, have this almost like balanced identity, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. So from a performance standpoint, in terms of getting better and improving, we want to be doing intentional gaming. So having goals, playing less, but again, as Beck said, focusing on the technical pieces of the games that you guys are wanting to improve upon. And while also when we're playing less, there's going to be more free time. So figuring out how we're going to fill that as well, based on your personality, your values, and your interests. So when we think about being intentional with our gaming, goal setting comes up. So when we talk about goal setting, there's kind of two big ones. So there's the process goals and the outcome goals. The outcome goals are like the end game. Where do you see yourself going in this field? You know, do you want to go pro? Do you want to be a mentor? Do you want to coach? What does that look like? Or is it just for fun? Or a combination of a bunch of things? And so really reflecting on what that big goal for you is. And then with the process goals, again, just breaking them down into baby steps. What does that look like? How are you going to get to these big goals that you want to achieve? Focus is a big thing in performance. There's a reason why in hockey games or basketball games or whatever sports you're watching, there's breaks, there's intermissions, because we need breaks. We need to get up and we need to move around. We need to have a snack. We need to do these things because our brain just after 30 to 45 minutes, just the focus is just gone. So it's really about taking those breaks and being intentional with what you want to do with them. Like I said, getting some exercise, getting out, whatever that is. And then when you go back to gaming, again, your performance, you're kind of coming in with a fresh mind as well. So it's really important, like I said, take breaks and be intentional and set those goals with regards to what you want to accomplish in gaming. The next piece that I said I was going to talk about again was this identity foreclosure. James Marsha, I think he's Canadian, actually, is a Canadian psychologist, and he developed an identity model. And so Matt and I talk a lot about this. The APA defines identity foreclosure as a premature commitment to an identity, the unquestioning acceptance by individuals, usually adolescents, of the role, values, and goals that others, examples are parents, close friends, teachers, coaches, have chosen for them. The individual's commitment to the foreclosed identity, for example, of the athlete, occurs without exploring its value or contemplating alternative roles that might be more appropriate for him or for her. Gaming's just another form of this. I've seen it in athletes, in business people that obsess over their sport or their game or their work to the detriment of other aspects of their identity that are ruled by this fear of failure or the need to prove their worthiness because of this. I don't know if you've seen the Michael Jordan documentary, but Michael Jordan is a great example. He's fantastic at what he does, but he is driven by that fear of failure to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
And it's so relevant. It happens all the time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But in terms of like pro gamers develop from what I've seen and from what Matt's seen as well, is those unhealthy habits that many athletes or entrepreneurs develop. And I don't think that a lot of people have seen what a healthy high performance gaming culture can look like. And that's what Mind Buffs is trying to provide, is how do we culture this, and as well as with AESA. And so, and Matt and I talk a lot about, imagine being shamed for being really good at something. And that's a really confusing place to be in, especially as kids, right? And and it'll most likely leave you feeling like there's really no place. And that's where that identity piece comes in. So again, I think it's related to that goals, fulfilling those goals. And if you don't, again, what do you want to see? And then having some plans, like plan A, if that is going pro, what does that look like? But if it doesn't work out, what would plan B or C or D look like as well? The best example I can give is Michael Phelps talks a lot about it. He does his Olympic stuff, gets his gold medals. And then it was like, well, now what? I've accomplished everything I want to. And then he went into this deep depression, suicidal thoughts, and he talks about it a lot. And so it's, again, that's where that identity piece and really, getting other things, doing other things is really important outside of gaming, and as well as like from a performance standpoint to have that identity piece. So
yeah, that's actually a wonderful answer.
Go ahead,
I want to chime in as well. I've even throughout my time in this community running these events, I've often seen so many of our own community members driven by that same type of aspiration, the fear of failure, or the drive to prove others wrong, or to prove themselves as like a top contender, or the capacity to win tournaments or to win events. And I've also seen many of them achieve that goal of, you won. Now what? What's the next step? Or they're ranked number 1 in the province. Now what? And it's this constant like, well, now I'm the best in the province. I need to be the best in Canada, and then I got to be top 100 in the world and the top 10 in the world, and it's just ongoing chase. And you can, I guess the phrase is like, you get lost in the sauce in a way. Like you don't have a defined goal of what you're trying to reach. You're just trying to hit that next step, like one after the other. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And I also want to say thank you so much for Mind Buffs in particular to do what you're doing. This particular, unregulated, decentralized space in esports is something that we're deeply trying to fulfill as a nonprofit organization at AESA, and to fulfill that role as a provincial sports organization that you'd see in any other traditional sport. And to have professionals within your field of sports psychology taking that step into esports to provide our community and these players with those professional services that are available in the sports world, but not yet available in the esports world, is just wonderful. It's certainly the first step. And we're very thankful to have you and Matt take those steps with us.
And we're glad to be on board. We're excited. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had left to say. So yeah.
That's great. Does anyone? It's actually a great segue to the third talking point here. But was there anything else that anyone would like to chime in on this particular topic before we move on to the third?
I just wanted to jump in and thank Alex. I think it's incredible work. And I think that when you talked about mental health and thoughts of suicide, I think it's so important for us to talk about that and normalize that. That is common for not just gamers. It's more common than we think, but because of the stigma around mental health and suicide, we don't talk about it as much as we should. So I just want to let everyone know that at Distress Center in Calgary and CMHA in Edmonton, we offer these incredible services, and we talk to people who are struggling with their mental health and thoughts of suicide every day. So we talk about it so much, and we just want to keep that conversation going and make sure that people know that 2-on-1 is an awesome resource for people who might be having thoughts of suicide or just struggling with their mental health in general.
No, that's actually great, and it's definitely something that we'll promote on our end as well as a resource, because certainly during this entire environment right now with the pandemic, but also just the competitive space, I think there's a lot of vulnerability there, and having that resource available, it's just great. So thank you, Geraldine, for additional insight. So I want to shift gears slightly from the gaming and performance dynamic to the financial component of it. And oftentimes in the esports world, where, as Rebecca mentioned before, where your work and your livelihood is tied to your performance or tied to your particular career as a competitor, there's this component of financial insecurity and instability attached to that, or even in the content creation world as an artist. outside of the competitive space. So in addition to what's happening in the world right now with the pandemic, the world of gaming and content creation just is financially volatile to begin with. There's been a huge wave of aspiring professional gamers and content creators within the competitive industry and gaming as a whole during this pandemic as things have moved online. Many people have started streaming, started to create their own content. As well as another dynamic of gaming that's starting to get very popular is the prevalent increase of free-to-play models that include predatory gaming mechanics like loot boxes, or like there's these, gambling components that walk the line between what's gambling. So what advice would you give to these esports players, gamers, and content creators such that they can continue to do what they love, but do so sustainably, both financially and mentally?
Yeah, so obviously I'm used to talking to myself for several hours at a time. So if I go over time, please just cut me off. Because I'll probably be the one the most likely to do it.
We're good for time still, yeah.
Okay, good. And I also want to invite the chat to ask any questions that they have at the same time. I'm really familiar to changing my train of thought, so I'd be happy to answer anything specific you might have.
That's a good point, actually. I'll chime into the chat real quick here. So if there's any questions that you'd like to ask in the live chat, by all means, we can address it at the time if it's pertinent. Otherwise, any questions we can address at the end during the Q&A stage.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to start on the loot box piece because I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand, the way that they get you to spend money on those. And then I'll dive into talking about managing your money as a content creator and strategies that I've used to build my setup, and how much a typical setup could cost, that kind of thing, so you have an idea of what to expect. So first things first, let's talk about loot boxes. So me personally, I don't play games that have loot boxes because I just know myself better than that. And I think what's really important, and I think what's really important to talk about with that is that they're specifically aiming for a group of people. It's not that it's the gamer themselves, it's that age range. Anything from the age of 16 until you turn 30, you are far more likely to spend money on a loot box or pay-to-play system, like, those like apps, like story apps that you can get for your phone, where you have to pay like coins or whatever to use like certain types of actions. They do it for those as well. So the reason that they're able to be really successful in that is they use a twofold system to make it difficult for what's considered to be an underdeveloped brain to understand what the actual value is that they're selling you. So they'll say that 100 coins is $6 and it costs 5 coins for this action. Our brain within that space isn't geared to quantify what that actually means in dollars and cents per action. And they take advantage of that in order to get you to spend significant amounts of money. And the way that they are able to do that is if you don't spend money on a game, typically within the first 11 days, you're usually not going to. So that first 11 days from when you've downloaded the game, all you're going to see is reasons to spend that money, because someone's paid tons and tons and tons per year to convince you to part with your resources in order to get the fictional resource that they're trying to provide you. For me personally, I have ADHD. I'm very vocal about having ADHD, and the ADHD mind is very susceptible to instant gratification like that. So Genshin Impact is the one that everyone talks about right now. I literally can't even download it because I will be like, it'll be ridiculous. I got really hooked on a story-based game not that long ago that had that same elements. And when I looked at my bank account after I'd finished playing the whole thing, I was like, oh shit.
I actually did not download Genshin Impact either because I know I'm susceptible. I have like some gambling tendencies. I like at like K-days, you'll see me at the tables, to say the least. But I choose to avoid those types of games as well, because just my lack of self-control. I'd rather just avoid it entirely.
Yeah, and it's like you have to know yourself, obviously, and I think before you make that first like major mistake where like you have the reason to think about yourself in that way, to be like, oh, maybe this is something that I'm not able to handle. I think it's really hard for people to understand that it's really not something that's wrong with you. It's that the games themselves and the way that they're manufactured to be that way is actually quite predatory. And as of right now, there's no regulation in our space for that. So in gambling, there's regulations, right? Mm-hmm. There's rules. You can only do so much. But with things like loot boxes, with things like pay to play, like pay to win, mm-hmm. there's no regulation. So you're completely susceptible to whatever your personal boundaries are. And if you're somebody who has no boundaries yet, that's the boundary of your bank account. And that's when you see a lot of people get into a lot of trouble. So definitely, I'm not saying, you can't play those games. If you're somebody who can handle that and has like the dexterity of the mind to be able to be like, I'm only going to spend $25 on this game and that is it, then great, awesome, love that for you. Me personally, I know that I can't do that. As cute as everyone is on Genshin Impact and how much I would love to play, it's beyond my ability.
No, and I think the piece of it being unregulated is just a common topic right now with gaming at large. Like the esports and gaming space has just exploded, and technology, frankly, in general. This is actually a technology problem in many ways with social media and everything else. But in terms of gaming, it's certainly grown much faster than the government or any type of regulatory body can keep up with. So not only is it unregulated in the sense of not having like a sports governing body that's in place or having any of those resources, but it's also there's no policies in place to, limit these game developers to particular strategies or to avoid certain,
and like even phrasing. And like the way that they do it, right? Like the pay to win is the one that's always really bothered me. And we saw it happen with major corporations not that long ago. If you guys remember EA, I think it was Battlefront.
That's right.
The most recent one.
Yeah, the big controversy there.
Yeah, and that was about they had blocked off a very popular character that made it so that you would have to realistically spend money to get there. So it was like, and I'm all for cosmetic, like pay to win, like scenario. Like if it's like Warframe does a great job where it's a free to play game, but there are cosmetic options or additional options you can purchase if you desire. But almost everything can be made in game. I think when it comes down to I have to spend this money in order to be able to get to this point, that's when we see a lot of problem. And because a lot of gamers love to collect as well. A lot of people started their gaming career and their gaming kind of lifespan on Pokemon, which the whole thing is you've got to have them all.
You got to have them all. You got to collect them all. Yeah.
We're all trained that, if there's a set of something, you want the entire set. A lot of people are going to find it very difficult to be like, oh, well, I don't need this one. I have this one. No, I have to get all 151. That's the whole point of the thing, right? So
and that's why Pokemon is the most profitable media company of all time. Like beating out Disney, Marvel, Hello Kitty, all of it. Yeah.
Pokemon's my husband said to me yesterday, because I love like these stuffed animals called Squishmallows. He's like, they should make a Pokemon and Squishmallow collab. I was like, we would be destitute.
Yeah,
it would be insane.
You should have seen me I'm like, hits the nostalgic strings for me too. And when I went to Tokyo, Japan for the first time a couple years ago, and you went to the Pokemon Center, they sold plushies of every Pokemon you could conceivably think of. So I was just like putting everything in my cart, not even looking at the price tags. So I was just so excited.
It's like it's like a whole like addiction thing, right? That's the thing is you get that immediate serotonin hit to your brain, and then it's good for a moment and it feels great. It's the same kind of serotonin hit that we get when we win a match, right? Like where you're like, hell yeah, we did it. Like that rocks. But then it dissipates so quickly because there's always something else to want. So
yeah, and that ties into also Alex's point earlier on as well. Yeah. Okay, that's actually so. Well. I guess we'll shift from our issues with the gaming,
and move on
the gambling space. Yeah. So with regards to within your space, particularly with you, Bex, as a content creator, as a streamer, and certainly I'm sure you speak on behalf of like gamers as well. It's the same kind of environment for competitive gamers. Do you have any insight as to dealing with the financial insecurities and instability that's kind of intrinsic to those career paths?
My advice probably won't be very popular, to be quite honest, because a lot of people don't like to hear it. But pretty much there's like two major problems that people face, right, when it comes to creating in the gaming space. One, my gear isn't so good, but I don't have the money to improve it. Or two, I want to do this full time, but the money is like not there. So the first one being start with nothing. I started with like nothing. My husband's 10-year-old laptop, And that was after I streamed with no mic and no cam from my PlayStation playing Skyrim. And like, I'm not kidding. You can start with absolutely nothing. If you truly love creating and you want to be a content creator, literally all of us has one of these in their pockets that has a nicer camera in it than most most
cameras
you can buy. So, if you want to start vlogging, great, do it from your phone. If you want to start a Twitch channel, awesome. Use that crappy laptop that you already have. Buy yourself a Turtle Beach $50 headset from EB Games like the rest of us did and just start going. And then you can invest, right? First of all, you have to find out that you like it, right? That's a whole problem. Yeah. And then most of my setup, I actually recently had a reporter ask me about how much I spent to become a food and drink streamer, because our setups are notorious for being very expensive, multiple camera angles, lighting, the gear alone, right? Most of my setup, I was either gifted, saved up, or my community bought for me. And that's the case for a lot of content creators, especially in the Twitch space, where we have that connection with our viewers and they want to see you succeed. If you can't afford something, simply make do with what you have. Borrow something from somebody else. Ask around to find the cheapest option. I really wanted a Elgato capture card. I'm not spending $200 on a capture card personally. And one of my friends was like, as long as you don't want to play Smash, you can get this one. And I was like, okay. And I did. And it was $30. So you just need to use the resources that you have is the biggest thing when it comes to making, and get comfortable in those limitations. The stuff that makes it so that you can't make the things that you want, especially if you are somebody who gets really into cameras, for example, there's always going to be a limitation on your camera. There's always going to be a threshold that you're going to hit where you can't make it perform, even with a new battery, with a new lens, whatever that's going to be, beyond what its capability is. But get comfy in that. Get used to being uncomfortable and having to work around with the tools that you have, because that's what's going to make you more creative. If you can pay someone to shot for shot make exactly what you want, what was the point of you coming up with the idea? You need to take your time in order to be able to fluctuate into those things and be happy with what you can produce with the resources you have. And that ties immediately into, as well, it's extremely volatile to be a content creator full time. I personally would never suggest to somebody to only be a content creator. Your multiple streams of income that you would need to have in order to be able to facilitate that, unless you are a 1 in a million kind of person, is extremely high. You see it a lot with YouTubers, are a great example of this, where obviously YouTube produces income on its own, which is a lot less volatile than Twitch income for the most part. But they'll also sell merch. They'll have a music career. They'll have books that they put out. They do sponsorship opportunities. All of those things are different streams of income that you can use to get yourself into a place where you can do this full time. The thing about being a full-time content creator that a lot of people forget is that all of that time then that you are putting into regular work, your 8 hours a day at your day job, now is time that you have to spend hustling to make sure that your bills are getting paid, on the flip side of being a content creator. And when it might be something that's super fun right now, it might not be fun 6 months down the road. And because of the way that the gaming space shifts constantly, it's really challenging to find a niche that's going to be the same forever. Look, you can look at Tim the Tapman. He's a great example of this. Tim predominantly plays Fortnite, but you'll see him more and more now playing other games, because eventually the Fortnite craze is going to be over. If you are a single game player and that's all you have, eventually we all have our time. We will all expire. There will be a day when we are 85 and you say to your great grandkids, "Oh, did you get the new Pokemon game?" And they're going to say, "What's Pokemon?" You know what I mean? Yeah. It's eventually everything that we do is so temporary in the content space. And if you aren't somebody who can evolve really rapidly, it's going to be so hard to move forward. And I also think if you're going to go full time, you should be making at least 2 times what your average expenses are for at least 6 months before you even consider going full time. And the reason that I say that is because at that point, you should have been saving the other half that you were making that's above your monthly expenses, which means you should have a 6-month cushion so that if it goes really poorly, if something goes wrong, then you have something to fall back on. and never leaving your workplace in like a poor way, leaving your doors open, because if it does flop, you need to have a place to go back. Yeah. And I understand that that's not really in a lot of content creators, and myself included. There's an element of ego in it, right? And those kinds of talks don't play into our ego very well, which is like, well, obviously I'm going to be super popular and make a ton of money.
Yeah, like, this is like for startups as well. It's like, yeah, you know what? We're just gonna cut out ties, and we're 100% like.
I'm in, right? Yeah. But the reality is like, unless you're somebody who has a family who's willing to support you, has a partner who's willing to support you, has somebody who has the financial backing to be able to ensure that like food's on the table, your rent is paid, like you're not ready to hit that jump yet. And right now, I mean, with COVID, a lot of people are starting, careers in this space because they don't have a job, and they're just trying to see what can kind of work.
Yeah.
Don't become a content creator because you think you're going to get rich quick. It is not easy to build a community. It's not something that takes a short amount of time, especially on Twitch, because the thing about Twitch is it's like appointment television. But it's appointment television that you really can't PVR, because like almost no one is going to go back and watch your VOD. That's just the reality. With something like YouTube that has like a little bit more flexibility as to when somebody can watch it and still support you, it can be a little bit easier. And I think that's why, again, multiple streams of income are so important. I think that's also why you saw a lot of YouTubers make the hop to Twitch, because they already had those people who are willing to tune in every week for their YouTube content. They had that comfortable cushion there, but the hop to Twitch just gave those people who were dedicated to their existing audience opportunity to deepen those relationships with them and support them in a different way. And I mean, being unique is also very important in the space. Like, there's very few people who do what you do is the thing. Exactly. You have to find somewhere where not only you are being true to yourself, but also that people want to watch. And that can be challenging on its own right. When I started, when I became, I guess, affiliate, and I actually started like really paying attention to Twitch, I was an Overwatch streamer. I played Overwatch for like 3 days a week. And I stopped. And I became a cooking streamer, which was realistically not even actually a thing at the time. Nobody cared about or knew about. And then started talking about money, which was also something that a lot of people weren't doing. You have to find that thing that's going to actually make you happy and kind of pull you out of whatever it's going to be that you think that they're going to want.
Yeah. No, that's great. And this is a great opportunity, again, to remind everyone, be sure to check out Bex and her streams, especially her Financial Fridays, which are great. And she's very active on socials, too, if you have any requests or questions that you'd like to ask her. I think her socials, if someone could share her socials on the Twitch chat, that would be great, too. Unless you want to do that yourself, Bex. Go ahead.
I can do
your socials.
Yeah. Just give me
Awesome. No, that's great. And I think that's a great segue to our last key talking point here, which is for care for others. So I know that Geraldine touched on this, and essentially this played a bit of a role in all the talking points so far, but caring for others in addition to caring for ourselves, particularly during this difficult time. We may have loved ones around us, those who are struggling and in need of support, particularly during this pandemic period that we're in. So this is a question for you, Amanda, to wrap up our last talking point. What are some steps and strategies that we can take to support those around us and to make a positive impact despite having minimal personal financial resources or resources in general?
Oh, thanks for including me. This is a really fascinating space, and the mustard seed doesn't seem to really kind of speak into the space too much, other than the fact that, as Bex pointed out, at some point, people get to the place where they are unable to pay their rent, or they're unable to put food on their table. And more these days, we are dealing with people who may not be unhoused, but they are minimally housed. So they are able to pay their rent, but beyond that, they have nothing. And it's a real struggle for so many people. And during COVID, it's become even more of a struggle. And that's what we're there for. pain itself and struggle is a really isolating experience. There's a gentleman by the name of Robert Murphy who was writing about when he had cancer, and he said nothing is quite so isolating as the knowledge that when I hurt, nobody else feels the pain. And even when I die, the world will continue on with barely a ripple. And the truth is that when individuals are struggling, it can be a really lonely experience. So when we see other people in pain, oftentimes we don't really know what to do for them or how to help. And we deal with that all the time at the Mustard Seed. And so beyond that, people may, individually reach out to us, but ask us to not tell anyone else, like, to say that they want to keep their pain private. So what's our role in other people's pain? And first off, it's to know and understand that we don't have to have the answers ourselves. Instead, it's our job to know our community. Like Geraldine was talking about, it's know what resources are available and how to access them. Trust the professionals. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but like look at people like Geraldine and Alex who are there. They have answers. And so if you see somebody who's struggling with mental health issues or with issues around poverty or with issues around those kinds of things, be willing yourself to figure out how to access that help. Even reach out to those organizations yourself first to figure out how things work, learn the systems, and then walk beside your friends, encouraging them like as a supporter and being there with them. You don't have to have the answers. It's just a matter of helping them and walking beside them. And Geraldine alluded to concerned about like someone's safety and suicide. We deal with that so much at the Mustard Seed these days. Primarily, don't be scared and shut yourself down if you notice something. Learn about the warning signs of suicide. They're all over. You can find them anywhere. And then be willing to step in and ask someone what they need and help them then access those services. So there's this kind of crazy truth that happens out there right now. There's an amazing amount of very trained people, amazing organizations who have staff that have worked really hard to know what they're doing to help out people who are struggling. And they're formed into these nonprofit organizations or groups, etc. And they're not there to make money. They are there to help people in times of need. But the truth is that the majority of these nonprofits, they are poorly funded and they struggle to get their message out and to make a difference. And so while filled with like all of these amazing people who are trained and willing and able to make a difference, that nonprofit often struggles to make ends meet themselves. So my job as a senior development person is to help organizations and nonprofits get resourced for what it is that they need. And it's allow them then to concentrate on doing the job that they're there to do in the first place. So we know what to do for people individually, but my encouragement also is to help individuals understand and realize your power to help organizations. So realize the power that you have both as an advocate, as a fundraiser, as a volunteer, and how you can step out and step in on behalf of organizations. In terms of advocacy, if you realize that there's an issue that's systemic, that there's a need for change for more than one person. Vic, you sit on basic income panel, and when we know and understand that, think about the power that you have as an individual, but then as part of a larger community. What's the impact of your voice when you're joined by a million other people speaking out about homelessness or speaking out about mental health? So using that collective social power to speak good makes a huge difference. Being a champion of organizations and sharing their truth. And so how to do it? Get informed. Make it your mission to get informed. Specifically, you can choose one or two or just a few organizations. You don't have to try to become informed about everyone, but then make it your work to interact with them and get their message out. Be a warrior for good. Take the time during your day to reach out, to share the posts that they're putting out, to be like commenting them positively on their social media, follow them, friend them, that sort of thing, talk about them in conversation, and just be a voice, getting that out there. In terms of fundraising, understand the collective power of fundraising. The Mustard Seed is a prime example of an organization that's not funded by one or two or a few individuals who are giving $1 million each, but rather we're funded by a whole lot of donors giving $1 each. And that makes a really big difference. And so know and understand the power of your dollars coming together with other people. And in terms of volunteering, it's not just you going and getting experience. When you step out as a volunteer in an organization, what happens then is that organization is able to not have to pay staff to do that job. So whatever task that is, they don't have to pay people to provide that service. So it makes a huge difference when you can step out, take over some of the tasks. You may not know everything about, in our case, like poverty and homelessness and that sort of thing, but step into the line and help put the food on out and make it, help do so many different things. That takes the pressure off the staff, those trained staff especially, to be able to do the job that they're there to do. So I guess kind of in summary, it's not about having money, but making a choice to do good in our community by working together as a team, understanding what is available in our community, and then reaching out in that.
Wow, that was like a beautifully succinct answer, Amanda. I actually was moved to tears by like your first story there and the mantra of walking beside your friends and your community. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Amanda. That was I have so much I want to say to what you just said, and I feel like I could listen to you all day with like the soft timbre of your voice, like speaking on these wonderful topics. It was just deeply engaging. So thank you, Amanda. And I think that ties into this whole event as a collective, I think. As you know, and as our audience may know, the Alberta Esports Association, we operate as a nonprofit organization. We're deliberate in incorporating ourselves as such. And because of that, our whole team, myself included, we're all volunteers. This is a volunteer-driven initiative. So one thing that I want to do a quick shout out, because it's pertinent right now, is with Self-Flats, another big milestone for this particular event is this is not only the largest event we've ever done in Alberta, and the largest esports event in Alberta, period, not just from us, but it's also the first time we were able to meaningfully compensate most of our staff. So we have, for 15 years doing this in Alberta, have completely relied on crowdsourced volunteers. But thanks to all of our amazing sponsors at the Gaming Stadium, at TELUS, at United Way, at Herbaland, and Explore Edmonton, and the list goes on. Because of their support, we're finally able to actually compensate the talent. And volunteer burnout and all of that were huge concerns for ourselves. So I'm really glad that we're able to take that first step. That by itself is very historic. But that being said, we're also for every staff, there's like 5 volunteers behind them. There's volunteers sitting in this Discord right now, running this stream. So I do want to send a huge thanks to all of our volunteers and our community members, because this event, our organization, our community in Alberta just simply would not exist had it not been for just the collective power of our communities and all of our volunteers. As Amanda mentioned, one person has like so much has the capacity for so much impact and power with the collective. So thank you so much. So I know we're about to wrap up. Oh, and someone I think just dropped out of the call here. Bex disconnected. Okay, so our webcams are a little messed up on the stream, but I do want to take this time for the last few minutes to, if there's any Q&As, we can take that time to. Oh, we only have 1 minute. Okay, what we'll do instead is I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to allow all my guests to have their final words and calls to action before we say goodbye to all of you. So real quick, everybody, let's go. We'll start with Geraldine.
I would just say that you are powerful. I loved Amanda's message. And yeah, I think everyone has the power to make their community a better place and to reach out to others and support others and help themselves and take care of themselves.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, for joining us today. Amanda, do you have any closing words?
think realize what a warrior you can be, and reach out, make a difference, and choose to be positive good in community.
Thank you. Lastly, Alex, any closing words here before we wrap up?
Geraldine and Amanda said, reach out if you need help. There's people here to support you, and like I said, and reach out to friends too as well if you notice that they're struggling. So
wonderful. And yeah, we lost Bex, but you can follow her socials and tune into our next stream. But again, thank you so much, everybody. This has been a wonderful panel. This will certainly not be the last AESA checkpoint that we do, and I look forward to having you join us again as a speaking guest. So thank you again. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this panel.